There are only two things in life for sure. I remember from a certain movie, it's death and taxes. And death is a serious, serious discussion. And it's also something that we need to think about in other ways rather than just being prepared beforehand for, what we want our end of life to look like. We also want to think about how we may be able to benefit others if we pass away in an unexpected way, or sometimes even in an expected way. I've learned a lot about organ donation recently, and I wanted to share with you all today. So I brought Clement with LifeQuest, which is a part of UF Health, right?
Yes.
And he is my expert on organ donation. And this is a topic that I feel is difficult for a lot of people to discuss. Some people are very gung ho about organ donation, and other people have a lot of fears and maybe some misinformation. So, Clay, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you
Sheila.
for being willing to come and chat with us. So,
Sure.
what brought you to LifeQuest?
I think it was kind of an extension of my experience in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
I started most of my career I spent in consumer products, in sales and marketing, but in the last 10 to 15 years of my career, I've been in healthcare, and a portion of that was spent in hospice. So
Ah,
I was a
okay.
liaison
Yes.
with hospice. So that kind of opened my eyes to end of life experiences and
Mm-hmm.
how important it
Yep.
was for all of us to have advanced directives and getting good quality care in our
Yes.
latter years.
Yep, and
So,
we've talked about that numerous times here. Actually, I have some other episodes that I will link below that we've talked about putting together your living will so that
mhm,
people know what you want in those last days.
yeah.
But what I love is that even when you're going through your last days, you still have some things of treasure that you can leave behind.
Mhm.
And those are our organs. So you talked about something one day that was very intriguing to me, and I did not even realize. Um, you can donate organs at any age. I thought you had to be kind of young and virile and like a child or a 20 or a 30-year-old, but in reality, what's the age limit?
Well, the answer to that is there's no limit, really.
Yeah.
Sadly, at the worst time of a young family's life, when they're faced with the possibility, and occasionally it does happen where
Hmm.
babies pass away at or around the time of birth, they do have the opportunity to extend life to other babies that might
Mm.
be struggling at the time of birth. So, there are heart transplants, lung transplants, kidney transplants, all these organs that we know can be transplanted and can save lives.
Yeah.
Sadly, for those families that lost a child, there can be some encouragement that a part of their blessing can live on
Yeah.
in the lives of others, and
Yes.
and that's how some babies end up getting heart transplants around the time of birth, and then live
Mm.
fruitful lives thereafter, and with a lot of gratitude for
What a gift.
the gift. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the other end of the coin, though,
Mhm.
some of our elderly have said they don't want any part of me. I'm old. I'm withered. There ain't nothing good they're gonna get from me now, and that
Yeah.
is absolutely not true. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's always a treat when I go into independent living facilities or over 55 communities,
Hmm.
and so many people in these age groups are, and I'm one of them. Are some of these folks are quite surprised and excited over the fact that
Yes.
you can be an organ donor at an advanced age. And some of them say, "You mean I can be an organ donor?" And there's this
Yeah.
renewed excitement and enthusiasm for being a donor when they thought that those years had passed. Interestingly, the U.S. record up until recently was 95. A man named Cecil in West Virginia, I believe, set the record when he saved the life of a woman in her 60s by donating his liver when he
Oh
passed
wow.
at
Okay.
95.
So I was going
So
to ask what organs they would be looking for, but liver is one. Okay.
yeah,
And another one that I thought was very interesting is skin,
yes.
because at that point, the skin is actually a little bit more loose, right? And it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, we don't work with tissue procurement at LifeQuest.
Okay.
We just focus on organ donation. However, those tissue recovery organizations, and they are numerous throughout the country and here in Florida, they do tend to prefer more mature skin because there's a lot of collagen in young skin,
Right.
and that can it was a surprise to me, but that can be more difficult to work with because it is more elastic.
Yes.
So they do tend to prefer skin that's a little more mature.
So I think that's very encouraging. I still have some treasures that I can pass on and share, because there are an awful lot of people waiting for transplants. How many do we have right now? Do you know?
Yeah, in the U.S. we've got 100,000, just over 100,000 people waiting for a transplant of one kind or another. Right here in Florida, we've got over 5,000.
Yep.
So there's a pretty significant need.
I have a good friend actually that is waiting for an organ, and I guess he is in the last steps of qualifying and actually has a relative that will be donating. And it's very
Wow.
exciting. It
Okay.
has been a difficult journey for him, his wife, his children, and they're so looking forward to just having freedom. We
Yep.
don't think about how difficult it is to even go on a trip, to be able to leave town and go away from your healthcare professionals. It's 10 times harder to do that when you're waiting on an organ transplant.
It is. It can be especially challenging for people that are waiting for a kidney. About 86% of everyone waiting for any organ are waiting for a kidney. And those folks have got to be on dialysis.
Yes.
So if they're
Yep.
fortunate enough to have in-home dialysis care, that's great. It's still, and I say that's great compared to having to go into
Yes.
one of over
Yeah.
400 dialysis centers just in the state of Florida alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can't think about that. You can't go on a vacation or even a weekend trip because you've got dialysis again
Yep.
tomorrow. And it's 3 to 4 hours hooked up to a machine that essentially filters your blood in a way that the kidneys would be doing if they were functioning properly.
Yeah.
So that is a lifestyle experience that they have to deal with until they're fortunate enough to get a kidney on the transplant list. Now there is an organ exchange program that's been quite successful for a lot of individuals and families. I have a good friend of mine who her husband was in kidney failure. She was not a match for him. So she went through the organ exchange
Oh,
program and she
okay.
donated a kidney to actually a
else.
9-year-old. And that 9-year-old's mother was a match for her husband. So he got a
Wow.
kidney
That gives me
that way.
goosebumps.
It's pretty amazing. It really
That
is.
really
Yeah.
is amazing. So the kidney is one that you can do, an organ that you can donate even while you're living.
Yes.
Are there any
One of
others
two.
that you can donate while you're living?
The liver, good question. The liver is one too. The liver is very resilient. It's likely one of the reasons that older donors oftentimes donate their liver. But the liver regenerates itself. So in a surgery, they can remove about half the liver from the donor and give that to the recipient. And then those 2 half livers will regrow into a full-size liver again.
That is incredible.
it's
The human
amazing.
body just absolutely amazes me. That's
miracle.
another
Yep.
way that it amazes me.
Yep.
So when you're going to donate an organ, or you're needing an organ, what does that look like cost wise?
Well, a lot of people are afraid of what that could cost,
Yeah.
particularly people that are donors or donor family
Right.
members. They think, well, if my family members end up being donors, is that going to cost the family a lot of money? And actually, it's the opposite. It's the recipient's insurance company
Okay.
that pays for the transplant, not the donor or the donor
Okay.
family. So, yeah, it's really the financial side of it is covered by the insurance companies of the recipient.
That's incredible. So
Yeah.
how do you know if you wanted to donate your kidney or a part of a liver? Where do you go to do that? How do you do
Well,
that?
yeah, a couple of different ways. You can sign up on the donor registry just by going to the DMV, your driver's license, tax collector office, DMV. That's where about 90% of people that are on the organ donor registry have done so at the DMV. And you'll see on your driver's license, there'll be a little heart and it says donor. You can also do it at donatelifeflorida.org.
Okay.
And the flexibility with that option, and you can go on there whether you're already registered on your driver's license or not.
Right.
But you just put in your driver's license number or your permit or your state ID number, name and address, I believe, and then you can. There's a lot of flexibility there because you can select or deselect what you may or may not want to donate.
Right.
So some folks
Okay.
may be uncomfortable. You mentioned the tissue. They might be a little bit nervous about that, so they might say no, but they're quite happy to be an organ donor. So
Right.
on that website, donatelifeflorida.org, you can select or deselect what you may or may not want to donate. If you're not
Yes.
comfortable with the eyes or the corneas, for example,
Yeah.
deselect that and you can still be an organ donor.
And it's funny because I would be uncomfortable with donating my face or my eyes because I think that would be hard for my children to see if they were walking around.
Right.
But I would be very happy to donate pretty much anything else you need from me.
Right.
So,
Right.
and in fact, some people do want to donate, while they're still living. So do they go on that same registry and say, hey, I'm willing to donate now. I've got a kidney I'd be willing to donate, or a liver I'd be willing to donate. How does that happen?
Well, most people that want to donate an organ while they're still alive do so through the transplant center where their loved one or family member or very close friend is registered. So,
But I had a friend that just randomly decided, hey, this is what I feel called to do in life.
yep.
I have 2 good kidneys. I'm going to give one. And I don't know how she managed to do that.
It's a very selfless gift, but I would say go into one of those transplant centers
Okay.
and starting the process there
Yeah.
to make the connection.
To see
Yep.
who you would match and how that
Yep.
would happen. So you mentioned you can check that box on your driver's license.
Yes.
And I've now had 5 children that have gone through and gotten their driver's license. And I have had mine renewed as a married woman. And my husband was just very concerned. I'm throwing him totally under the bus here. My husband was very concerned because he was afraid that the first responders or the medical personnel would say, oh, this person's an organ donor. We're just not going to give them 100% care, or we're just going to go ahead and let them pretty much pass because we could use all these organs.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Well, we have heard that. It's probably the number one concern that we hear about. There's several reasons why that's not the case. Just the moral issue with that. First responders are, God love every one of them because that's the way they're wired. They're there to save lives. They're there
Yes,
to
they are.
expedite patient care, make sure that they get that patient stabilized and onto the hospital, and ideally get them home.
Yeah.
So that's letting a patient die is not only an ethical compromise for first responders, it's illegal, and
Yeah,
it's just not the case.
Yeah.
I've actually met and talked with police officers, paramedics, firemen and women, a lot of first responders, and they're actually aghast at the notion that any of them would even do that. The other interesting thing is they're not connected to the organ donation process.
Okay,
We're
that is interesting thought.
It is. We're
Yeah.
the organ procurement organization at LifeQuest here. We have a 36 county service area. We go from Pensacola to Jacksonville down to Ocala and everything in between. So we are the organ procurement organization that is called or receives a referral from the hospital when a patient is there in the hospital. If someone's in a car accident, for example, and somebody dies at the scene of an accident, we can't use those organs for transplant anyway. It's a
okay.
requirement that that patient be in the hospital on life support and on a ventilator in order for those organs to be getting the blood flow and oxygen they
Right.
need to be viable for transplant.
Because they need to be as healthy as possible.
They do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if a first responder, heaven forbid, were to let someone die or have someone die at the scene, those organs aren't viable for transplant anyway. So there'd be no motivation at all for a first responder to let someone die at the scene like that.
Yep. Yep.
So
And once they're in the hospital, they also are not there to let them just pass away so they can have an organ.
absolutely not.
And they're very careful about, analyzing and looking again and testing again, from what I understand, to make sure that the person isn't going to be able to come back.
Right.
And this may not be the way that you would recommend it, but I actually have in my living will, I have some very clear instructions about how I want that to go. So I want them to leave me on a ventilator or life support for a brief amount of time so that they have enough time to evaluate. And then I want for my husband, who is my first POA, and then my son, to determine whether or not my family members have had enough time to go in and say goodbye and hug me while I'm still there, in body anyway. And so then once that has happened, then please feel free to donate the rest. And I don't know if you guys recommend that, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great. I mean, it goes back to the advanced directives we talked about. I mean,
Yes.
having a healthcare surrogate for you that, and for some individuals that may not be a family member, maybe that's a close friend.
Yes, right. Who knows you well.
Yes, yes. Who wants to honor your wishes? So yeah, absolutely. If there are specific criteria around your end of life experience, whatever that may look like, and you want certain things done or not done at certain times, the advanced directives is your opportunity to be specific about that.
Yeah. And I feel like
encourage
that's
that.
made my family feel a lot better about that.
Yes.
It's not like they're not even going to have time to get to the hospital and somebody's going to say, you know what, take the life support off. That's not what she would want.
Right.
It gives some time to adjust and then remove that support gently. And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so I strongly recommend doing that. Again, I always recommend doing a living will, and so you're clearly outlining what you want, but that's a part that I think is important if you're going to be an organ donor.
Right.
And then people often want to know, hey, if I've donated my organs, can I have an open casket funeral?
The answer to that is yes. It's basically a surgery like any other. You would be, they recover the organs, they'd sew you back up, and all the funerals I've been to, everybody's been clothed, so you can't see if there are any scars at all.
I've never been
from
to
that
a
surgery,
naked-
any
yeah.
other surgery. So yeah, it's perfectly okay to have an open casket funeral. Yeah, or cremation. Some patients want to be, or individuals want to be cremated,
Yeah.
so they can still be organ donors and go through the cremation process afterwards.
Yeah, I just think it's such a big thing to think about, and such a great gift to those that are waiting. Literally every day they're hoping to get that call, and it's hard for the families that are donating in one sense, but if you can wrap your head around the fact that you've just given someone else their life back, it's so beautiful. I think there's a girl in Ocala that won all kinds of beauty contests. Share her story.
Yeah, that you're probably referring to Cassandra Fink.
Yes. Yeah.
She's a wonderful advocate for Donate Life and for LifeQuest. She's spoken to thousands of high school students with me in the
Yes.
classroom setting, and out in the public at large, even in the hospitals.
Yeah.
Her father is a liver recipient, and he went through the transplant process, received his liver, and is alive today because someone said yes to
Yeah.
donation. And ever since then, she has just been just a phenomenal advocate for donation, because her father was alive today to see so many meaningful moments in her life.
Yeah.
Saw her graduate from University of Florida, saw her compete in the Miss Florida pageant. Last year, in fact, she was first runner-up. And this year, in fact, now, this week,
Okay.
is the Miss Florida pageant. So she's there as we speak.
Oh,
I
that's
think
exciting.
it should conclude by the end of I think Saturday evening.
Oh, and she is
so
absolutely lovely. So
she
hopefully
is,
wins.
and Cassandra just has a wonderful heart
Yep.
for others and really wants to advocate. She's been to Tallahassee to talk with lawmakers about organ donation advocacy, and she's written a
Wonderful.
children's book, and she's just The Gift of
Oh.
Life is the name of it, and she's just a wonderful person. So if you follow the the Miss Florida pageant and all that's going on now. Let's be pulling for her because
Yeah, for
she
sure.
really
For
is a
sure.
great advocate for
And
what we try to do.
when this podcast comes out, they will already know by then.
Yes.
But I should link her book in my notes. So if you'll
Sure.
send me that link, I would be happy to link her
Great.
book.
Be happy to.
And you had actually either we watched videos at a meeting that I was at, a YouTube videos, or you suggested some. I think they were maybe like life-altering videos. I would love to maybe tag those if I can. So look down in the notes for those too. 'Cause
Yes.
I'm going to try to put those there.
I will definitely do that. Ray of Hope is the one that I show often in the high schools anyway.
Yes.
It's an ESPN video. You can go on the ESPN site, and Jason Ray is
Okay.
the donor.
Okay.
Saved
And
several lives.
I'll try to put that in the notes too, so it's easy.
Okay.
One other question that a lot of people have is, does my religion support donation?
Yes.
I know my husband and I were discussing even the other day cremation. You know, if you're supposed to rise in the last day and you've been cremated, how is that going to happen? I thought about this too. So go ahead and share that answer, and then I'm going to tell you the research we've.
Yeah. No, there are some nuances with some religions that struggle with the transfer of blood and cremation, but that's not the actual organ recovery process. What we understand and have through a lot of exhaustive study and conversation with all the major religions is that they all do support donation. They see that as giving back life, giving life, which is a tremendous gift, the greatest gift. So they're all very supportive of it.
Yes. And what we in our research saw, and basically on all platforms in a lot of the major religions, is that at the end of life, if you are looking to rise again in the end, that priests and pastors and things believe that the body it's glorified, and that it's not going to affect it. So they do seem to support organ donation, cremation, things like that you might want to do in most religions anyway.
Yeah, some faiths, believe that we have a new body, will be given a new body. Others,
I'm hoping for that,
I know,
honestly.
right? Won't that be nice? Always wondering if I can run faster when I'm in heaven.
I would like to just kind of get rid of the wrinkles and the extra stuff from having babies, and that.
I don't think we'll be worrying about the condition of our new bodies in
so.
heaven with our organs. So, but saving lives on the way out. It's I thought about this yesterday. I had an opportunity to speak with Gainesville Fire and Rescue and several local firehouse chiefs. And I thought about what they do every single day. They literally save lives every single day.
Yes, they do.
And they put their own lives at risk in order to do that. And it struck me that we can be lifesavers too after we're dead. We're not even putting ourselves in jeopardy. When
we're not even using it anymore.
And the amazing thing is each individual organ donor can save up to 8 lives.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's a pretty big day for a fireman if they saved 8 lives or more. For us to be able to save up to 8 lives and enhance the lives of many, many others, 75 plus, through tissue and eye donation, if we choose to do that. But I tell you, saving lives is after we're already gone is a pretty miraculous
What a legacy
thing.
to leave.
It really is, yeah. And it's an encouragement too. I think some of the families, there's one family who lost their daughter in Ocala several years ago. She was a high school student, I think at Forest High School. And when she passed, her recipient was a young girl, and the mom who lost her daughter was able to kneel down beside of this daughter that received one of her daughter's organs and listen to her daughter's heartbeat in the chest of this girl who received it. I mean, that's just mind-blowing to me. That it's tragic enough to lose a child, but to be able to hear your child's heart still beating after she's passed.
Oh, so there's so much right there. I'm
know.
about to cry.
I know.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I think, is there anything else that you want to add? I think this has been so helpful.
Well, thank you for having me. I think just communicate, have these conversations, with your
Mhm.
friends and family. Let's not make, organ donation be something that we don't want to talk about. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
you don't want to have these conversations at the end of life. If you have them now when you know, we know what we want, we know what we don't want, we know what kind of care we want and
Mhm.
need. And so our family members and friends know what our wishes are. So nobody's making decisions at end of life really with regard to this, but they can be honoring our wishes.
Yes.
And if that's something we want to do is to give life to others when we leave this earth, then that's a miracle in itself.
Yeah,
So
it so is. Well, thank you all for watching if you've gotten this far. If you haven't liked this episode and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And then share it. Share it with everyone because honestly, this is a topic that we should all be talking about. Thank you so much.
thank you.